Hey, it's Alex from Board Game Co over here, and today we're going into why I do these Kickstarter videos about the value proposition of Kickstarter, why I go into the return you can expect to get when you back a Kickstarter. And by return, I don't necessarily mean selling it, but rather if you're keeping it, selling it, I just want to make sure a game holds its value. Now, don't get me wrong, overall, the support from you guys has been absolutely tremendous. I could not be more grateful for how this channel is growing and how this channel is growing with you guys, and the positive feedback I've been getting from most people. I'm tremendously grateful. And don't take this video as an overly defensive response to that, because like I said, overall you guys have been amazing. But here and there I do get questions, I do get comments on why I'm focusing on so much on money, and it just feels like it's all about the money. It doesn't feel like it's about the board games. And it's almost completely the opposite. And so I wanted to go into why, but without having to do that for 5 minutes in every single Kickstarter video I do. This way, when people ask, I can just link to this video, and if you're coming to there from one of these links, well, hi, great to see you, and I hope you find this explanation helpful. But before we get into that, before we go into the whole story, my whole background, how I got here, let's start, because I love games, let's start by talking about Massive Darkness, very briefly, because CMON just announced that they are doing a Season 2 of Massive Darkness. Now, Massive Darkness, especially a Season 2, is something that has been wanted by a lot of people for a long time, and it's one that a lot of people have given up, myself included, have given up hope that we'll see a Season 2. Massive Darkness had a lot of promise, a lot of nice things about it, great promise to the game itself, and yet the final product is, I would say, very good, but not amazing. It definitely falls into a category of games I'm constantly debating whether I should get rid of it. In fact, I did get rid of it once and got this one back, but that was before I played it. I got rid of it before I played it, so I don't really count that as much. But in any case, that little thing about Massive Darkness aside, let's go into the backstory here. So, I love board games. I've always liked board games. Well, that's not true. I haven't always liked board games. I've liked board games since theoretically forever, but the hobby specifically since around 2012. And I also like being financially responsible. And that one, I'm going to say, goes back a lot further. I've always been one of those people who tries to look for the opportunities to save money where it makes sense. I've always been the kind of person who will price shop when necessary. Not when necessary. I'll price shop all the time. When I'm buying a house, I called 4 different mortgage providers to quote 4 different rates. Whatever it is, you always, or me specifically, I always want to find opportunities to save money where it makes sense. Russell Peters has a great joke about how, I mean, I'm Jewish, you may have noticed this in other videos, and Russell Peters has this great joke about how people think Jews are cheap, but he's like, no, Jews aren't cheap. Jews are thrifty. They want to find value where they're spending their money. He then goes on to talk about how Indians are cheap, but I'll leave the touchy jokes up to Russell Peters himself because I don't want to go down that road. Now, so I've always wanted to be financially responsible, and I always liked board games. And so when I got into the hobby and I started spending a lot of money on board games, over time, I developed different tips and tactics and strategies of how to actually ensure that I'm not spending more money than I need to. And need is a relative term, obviously, but in proportion to the value I was getting back. And I do have a bunch of these tips that I'll be going into in some of my other videos. I started a playlist where I talk about how to sell games, and it's going to cover different financial aspects of the hobby. How to sell your games, how to save money gaming, how to trade, how to buy, all these different things. And I will cover that more in detail. But the specific aspect, the specific tip I want to cover in this one, because of how it's relevant to Kickstarter, is how I'm a big fan of not getting games right when they come out. Wait until the hype dies down. Wait until the market determines whether it's actually a good game, because you don't need to be a playtester for the hobby. You don't need to be someone who buys the newest hotness as soon as it comes out, paying a premium, not waiting for discounts, and also effectively being a playtester for how good the game is. Why should you take that on yourself for no benefit? If it's a good game, it will be constantly in print or reprinted. There'll always be exceptions, but for the most part, that's true. And so that was always one of my tactics for how to stay financially responsible within the hobby. How to spend as much money as I wanted to on good games, but as little money as I could possibly avoid it on games that may not be for me. Now, I always allowed myself exceptions, of course. There's always going to be maybe a designer I like, a company I like. There always will be some exceptions. But to give you context, Terraforming Mars, Gloomhaven, both games that are in my collection are games that I waited. Spirit Island I love. Terraforming Mars I love. Gloomhaven I haven't played enough to say I love, but I really enjoy it so far. And those are all games that I didn't get them day one. I got them all a year to two after all the hype was going on and on and on. And it's not because I couldn't afford it, it's because I tend to like waiting for the hype to die down. I tend to like waiting for the initial game to hit and to see whether people like it or not. It's a great way to save money in this hobby. And then Kickstarter happened. And Kickstarter ruined all my plans. Because Kickstarter doesn't allow you to go that route. Or more specifically, Kickstarters that offer the exact same retail release, those do allow you to go that route, and generally I say wait on those. Generally, if you watch my videos, if there's not a reason to back it on Kickstarter, I continue with my strategy of why be a playtester for free? Why offer your playtesting services, your money, your time on a game that might not be good? And so it's specifically my love of games, my desire to try everything that has me trying to develop these ideas, these practices, these habits of how not to spend money when I don't need to. And Kickstarter, though, the problem with Kickstarter is when Zombicide first hit, and Zombicide wasn't the first Kickstarter, I would say Alien Frontiers might have been the first notable one, but Zombicide really introduced the concept of stretch goals. They introduced the concept of exclusives, of things you couldn't get after the fact, so you basically could no longer make that determination of, I'll just wait and get it all later. Instead, you have to choose between the risk factor of I can jump in now and get all these extras, whether they're exclusives, whether the whole entire game is Kickstarter exclusive, whether you're getting extra characters, whether it's even just a first player marker. Suddenly they introduce the concept of if you want in, if you want all the things that we're offering, you have to take that leap now. You have to jump in now. You have to risk it all now. And so my entire tip of just waiting went out the window. Completely out the window. I have no choice to just wait later unless I want a often inferior copy. Doesn't mean it's a bad game. Blood Rage, one of my favorite games of all times. For a long time, until they had the most recent Kickstarter, I just had the retail copy, and it was incredible. The retail copy does not necessarily mean it's inferior, but there's certainly a good degree of FOMO, of extras you're not going to get when you have a retail copy on a game that has exclusives. Whether those exclusives are gameplay, whether they're components, they're all a factor in this aspect of just waiting or not. And the problem is Kickstarter always introduces to the best games. This next game is going to kill it. It's going to have gorgeous miniatures. It's going to have an inspirational combination of real-time worker placement with modular deck building, and it's going to be the most amazing game of all time. And we all believe it. We all tell ourselves that. We convince ourselves that. We see the current Kickstarter that's up in our faces that's asking us to give you our money, to give them your money, and it looks like it's going to be the best thing ever. But games can't be the best thing ever. It's inherent. You can't always have the next game being better than the last. Cult of the New is a real thing, but Cult of the New does not make games better. It's just a concept of FOMO. And yes, there will be iterative degrees of games being better as mechanics are streamlined over time. But that's on an aggregate level. On an individual level, not every game is going to be the blockbuster hit that you think it will. In fact, my Kickstarters that I started doing Kickstarter look-back videos where I go over my Kickstarters, where I cover the various games that have made it or haven't made it and what they've done. And I would say over the past year, I've probably kept, and from games I'm super excited about, from games I was super hyped about, I've probably kept maybe 3 out of 10 of them, or somewhere in that range. Reichbusters was on my top 5 most expected Kickstarters. I think, if I recall correctly, it was number 1. No, Project Elite was number 1. But it was in my top 5 most excited Kickstarters, and it's a game I didn't keep. And that will always be part of this hobby. Depends who you are. For myself, who I have too many games and I'm constantly trying to keep the best of the best, not every game is going to be the best of the best. Those gorgeous minis, inspirational combination of real-time worker placement with modular deck building, sounds great. But is it great? Will it be the next best thing for your collection? And what do you do if it isn't? Do you sell it, trade it, let it sit on your shelf, unplayed, feeling lonely, wanting you to actually pull it off and play it, but you know you won't? The miniatures are amazing, don't get me wrong, but is it worth pulling off and playing it? And everyone will have a different answer to that question. Everyone will have a different way that they deal with games they don't love, deal with games that they hate even. Some people keep games on their shelf that they know they will never play. And that's fine if that's you, but it's not me. I want the games on my shelves to be played. And everything else, I want it to be reinvested into the hobby so that I can continue to spend money on Kickstarter every single month. I am an addict but I'm an addict who wants to justify that addiction, justify that cost, by ensuring that the cost is not as high as it could otherwise be. I currently spend roughly in the range of $500 a month on Kickstarter. Some high months, some low months, but in the past year, I did a quick check before I did this video, and in the past year I've spent just shy of $6,000 on Kickstarter. That's a lot of money, and that's not a lot of money that I want to continue spending, especially when most of the games I don't keep. But I haven't actually lost money on Kickstarter. The games I sell, the games I want to like, the games I hope I'll enjoy, when I sell them, they pay for themselves and a little bit extra. The games I sell over time have consistently paid, not just for themselves, but for those 3 out of 10 games that I kept, they are paid for by selling the other 7. And the goal isn't necessarily to pay for those. That's gravy, I'll take it. My goal is specifically that when I spend $6,000 a year on Kickstarter, I know that I am either getting games that I love, or turning around and selling or trading those games for games that I love, or for money so that I can buy more games that I love. It is specifically my love of Kickstarter, my love of board games. I mean, really it's my love of myself, and therefore I want Kickstarter and board games, but specifically because I enjoy this hobby so much, I want to be able to give myself the freedom to do as much as possible, and that does mean looking at the value proposition of Kickstarter. Now again, I know a lot of you know this. I've gotten enough feedback on these videos. I've gotten enough comments and responses, and but whether people saying they already do that, whether people thank me for the advice, whether people, blaming me for the games I'm introducing them to, but also thanking me for the games I'm telling them not to back, I've gotten plenty of positive feedback from you guys, and I am truly, truly grateful. This video is not, I mean, you can watch this video, I hope you enjoy, but this video is not catered towards you specifically. It's catered to the idea that I don't like the idea that people might think that I am purely speculating on board games. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, don't get me wrong. But I want people to understand that I love board games. I love this hobby. I love Arena the Contest right here. I need to play Suburbia again, it's been a while. Sorcerer City's great. Besiege, Zombicide, Spirit Island. There are a ton of games on the shelves behind me that I really, really enjoy playing. And I want to be able to get every single game that I can. Remember that, gorgeous miniatures, inspirational combination of real-time worker placement with modular deck building game I've been talking about this whole video? I want it. It sounds fun. I mean, real-time worker placement, what does that even do? How do you do that without it being a madhouse? But it's modular deck building. I mean, it just sounds good. And I want that game. And the miniatures are just amazing too. The miniatures are they're really going to sell me on the game. And that's why I make these videos. I make these videos so that I have the freedom to spend the money I want without any guilt about me poorly spending that money. And that may not be for everyone. It's for a lot of people, for sure. It's definitely the more money you spend on Kickstarter, the more you're going to shift into that category of these videos being helpful for you. But these videos are probably less helpful for you if you're backing a few Kickstarters a year. These videos are probably less helpful for you if you have enough extra money that you don't even think about this aspect and you just can do what you want without having to worry about it. These videos are probably less helpful to you if you view supporting the creator and also just, giving yourself the games you want without the guilt aspect. If you're more in that category, these videos will be less helpful for you there too. Everyone will have different reasons why they back games on Kickstarter. Everyone will have different reasons why they spend the money that they do. For myself, I want to spend a lot of money on Kickstarter. And that means being disciplined about how I spend my money, where I spend my money, whether I think it's a good return. And yes, occasionally it does mean treating myself. Occasionally it does mean making exceptions for games that I don't think I'll see the value back if I don't like it. But it looks fun and it's cheap enough and I'll justify it. And I've done that a handful of times since I've gotten addicted to Kickstarter. Honestly, so far I've pretty much regretted every single one of those. That's the sad part. Where it's not that I think it was terrible to spend that $30, $60, whatever it was, but rather I knew at the time I was making a not, critically thought out investment of my money, and over time it didn't pay out. And that's fine. The creators won, the creators benefited, I'm totally cool with it. There are no real losers here. There are, unless you're someone who hates CMON or hates any of these large companies, then you could argue that there's real losers. But in theory, the money's going somewhere. It's either going to the publishers you like, it's either going to other people in this hobby who are getting a paycheck, or it's going towards your own pocket. So there's no judgment on how people spend the money, but I just want to make it incredibly clear that these videos, this series of videos, they're not designed for someone who's trying to make money in the hobby. By all means, you could. I just think there are easier ways to make money. I think there are less risky ways and less money tied up for years on end. If you want to use these videos for that purpose, be my guest. I have no problem with it. But it's not why I back Kickstarters. It's not why I look at the value proposition. And that's basically it. That's my 2 cents, my 15 minutes worth of 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gives you some insight into why I look at the Kickstarters the way that I do, as to why I am constantly looking as to whether a game is a safe back. Because however great the game looks today, why is that game so much better than the $30 copy of a board game you're going to find online? I mean, how many of you look at a $30 game on Amazon, on Cool Stuff Inc., on BoardGameCo.com? How many of you look at one of those games and think, you know what, I don't really need it. But that same game on Kickstarter, you'll drop 3 times the amount of money in a heartbeat. For some reason, Kickstarter does this to us. And I'm cool with it, as long as I am not losing that money every single time I am let down by a game. And I would say for myself, my own collection, that's probably about 75% of the time. Somewhere in the range of 75% of the new games I get, it's not that they're not good, it's that they're not as good as the other games I already have. Over time, your collection will constantly be setting its own bar higher, whereas your bar today might be here. As you get more and more better games, your bar starts being here and here and here. And the games either have to be better, or inevitably you're going to keep less of them. Again, unless you're just keeping the games and you don't really care what happens to them. But for myself, for other people who are trying to keep only the games they play and use the games they don't play to further fund their own addiction in this hobby, I hope you find these videos useful. And for everyone else, I still hope you find them useful. And if not, we have plenty of other content on this channel. I do a lot of other stuff, not just Kickstarter stuff, although the Kickstarter stuff does seem to be my favorite just because of how much there is. In any case, once again, I am Alex. I am excited about Massive Darkness. I hope you are as well. Actually, I don't really care if you are, but if you are, comment down below. I mean, whether you like Massive Darkness or not, I'm sure there's some game you like, and I'm sure there's definitely a game somewhere that you and I both enjoy. Until next time, have a good one.